Hi everyone, welcome to our meetup today. Today we are taking you through our product roadmap. This discussion by Jay and Eric. We had the great opportunity to have them take us through this product roadmap last week. Now we're really excited to share it with all of you here today. This session is being recorded, so if you would like to rewatch or share the recording, please check out our YouTube channel. If you have any questions, please raise your hand and we can make you a contributor. Or alternatively, the Q&A is open and you can please drop your questions in the Q&A if you would prefer. In terms of kind of discussion, we'll be reserving a few minutes at the end of the session to share and talk all of this through. So if you would like to save your questions for then, please do. So with that said, I'm going to hand over to Jay and Eric. Thank you.
Thanks, Maddie. I think I'll kick off and set the scene for everybody. Ecosystem has been doing product-related innovations and focusing on different core capabilities in our product portfolio. And the big thing for us has been to decide cyclically what kind of open source products and technologies we support to help our clients deliver on their diverse agendas. So the principle for us has been to make sure that everything we do is enterprise enabled and capable for a technology team or a provider that sits inside, let's say, a client, delivering technology to them, enabling them to produce reliable outcomes. So having said that, we've got a cycle that typically runs over 3 or 4 times in a year. Our core designs often happen in San Francisco and New York, depending on what kind of design we are busy with. The current capabilities that we are focusing on are essentially multidisciplinary, and the existing ecosystem AI stack that you are probably all familiar with already, that deals with the interaction engine, recommendations, behavioral science, is being extended, and there are some capabilities we can talk to in that space. And we also have a number of other products that used to be entirely private to us that we decided to commercialize. We're not going to talk much to that today, but we're just going to give you a glimpse of what those are. So that's just a little background. I know that what you normally would expect in a roadmap are very specific headlines or products with specific timelines. The timelines we're going to be talking to are more level, so I'll give you a glimpse of what some of those are and when product releases are expected. So maybe just, I don't know if there's anything you want to say in the opening, Eric, anything you want to add to product side?
No, I think that covers it. I think you'll see when we're talking through a lot of focus on usability and packaging in the roadmap for this year. But yeah, we can share some of the details around that as we get into it.
So I'm just going to give you a quick glimpse of a high-level roadmap that we've been working on for many years. Those who know us will know that many of our products are sitting in point-something product release versions. The runtime has been around for a long time, and it's basically just 9.7. The big thing for us is to get to a point where we can move out of the state that we are in into an area where we can scale a lot more effectively. So the era we came out of was incredibly focused on what we call testing and proving. The testing and proving part of the business was to make sure that the capabilities core to our horizontal platform can be shared across different technological deployments and use cases, depending on where those get deployed. You will see as we move through this that the two intersecting pillars are essentially an enormous focus for this, especially for the next 18 months, but short term, especially for the next 3 to 6 months. That means, how do we take the capabilities we've tested that have been quite complicated for many people to configure? There were many moving parts, especially in the enterprise setup, that required people to configure complex architectures for deployment and clusters, all of those different areas that are really essential to make a technology deployment working. And on our journey to one means that you need to hide a lot of that complexity when you deploy a product like so. Our multitude of different tracks are coming together now in moving to our 08, and we're probably going to hit then 1.0 sometime, hopefully next 4 months. So we are aiming at getting it into full market by May. There will be other launches leading up to that time frame. Products like Ecosystem Code and the GraphMe capabilities will be launched prior to that, and they will be integrating environments that we will share with you as we move forward. The big thing about the roadmap is that there's an enormous, like Eric was saying, usability, packaging, enhancements and capabilities to make sure that we can get those into the right state of deployment. Just wanted to comment on things like generative models. We train a lot of these models ourselves. We used to spend a lot of time on fine-tuning and the like, and we are still doing that, but not necessarily in client-focused areas. The core part of our code generation products and the things that we're working on is being created in parallel to what we're working on now, especially our modeling tools. All of those will have a number of different generative models available, and we are continuously test that extensively. I know that when we share with clients findings that we've extracted from our testing, they normally find it incredibly useful. So if anybody wants to kind of tap in our learnings in this space, it's worthwhile to probably set up a follow-up and we can discuss that in more detail. So that's just kind of out of the starting blocks. The other thing is that we do have a very big focus on making sure that our deployment tools are easy. So you'll see that the prediction as a service capability, we've kept it very much under wraps. It is essentially an ability for you to spin up an entire vertical instance or a vertical cluster with all our core product pre-created so that you don't have to go do any kind of tests yourself. We also have scaffolds that you can use in the context of enterprise cloud. So you can decide how you get those set up and how you essentially deploy those. So there's a focus on making sure that deployment can happen a lot easier, especially in the enterprise setting. Eric, we just want to talk to the cluster capabilities and making it easy for on-prem versus cloud-related activities.
Yeah, so we've been focusing a lot on, we've seen that a lot of the deployment stuff in the on-prem space has moved into Kubernetes type environments, specifically either Kubernetes itself or OpenShift. So we've been focusing a lot on getting those deployments to be as seamless as possible and making sure that our deployments can fit into the default kind of Kubernetes security setup, just so that there's no need to kind of do any specific access in the service accounts or anything like that when you're setting it up in OpenShift, which we've started to see make the installs go faster with some of the recent ones we've done. And then obviously we'll, with the generative piece, if we use those as scaffolds and templates for generative structures we set up, then even if you do have specific requirements, we should be able to create those deployment constructs in a repeatable way.
Yeah, and I think that the big thing about it as well, that the generation that we've been working on will be able to accelerate your migration from an historical to a new type environment. So that means that if you wanted to regenerate your app into a serverless or some other environment, there's a full capability that is available that will be client facing. We're already testing it with some clients, but it will be fully available sometime later this year. We're working with a client where these things could take, what used to take months as a day's work. And you can focus in on your business requirement, and everything that you build is your case on top of that cluster configuration. So that means a big chunk of this year will be dedicated to making sure that the deployments and those capabilities are taken care of. So the thing about product roadmaps and product journeys, especially with a company like ours who's been through a number of different waves of inventions and making sure that we can get our foothold into where our product market fit will be going. We have a very specific track and product management team in place to handle the packaging capabilities. The packaging will be on the back of some pivots that we are going through. So what we will not be presenting today are the new modules that will be released. Those have been reconstituted from experiences that we had this year, or at least in the last year. The way that those will be deployed are essentially multi-capable recommenders, nudging engines, banking conversational areas, and other capabilities will be put together, including having your own extendable code front-end capabilities. You'll be able to configure something that historically was fairly complex using your own tooling. For our partners, this is a pretty exciting development because the access to experienced people that know how to operate algorithms has been a big historical challenge for us. So let me just go through a little bit of the thinking and idea. This is just an indicative view. I don't want to go into the detail of this, but basically the positioning is that we are moving from what we call consumer into a more client-facing world with everything that we do. So that means that what is the capability that you need as a organization that deals with mass markets or some kind of client base, in obtaining enough evidence about that customer and the way that you engage with them, and then having tools that with automating across the board those capabilities. So the way that we've been speaking and the way that we've positioned some of the language is what we call clientize. So in the consumer world, that's mass market, very thin, very broad. Customer means that I focus on few and get some kind of way of having a contextual understanding. And then the issue around clientization is that how I deploy what I have in a way where you can construct a lot of your own cases. You can still use your public and other tooling that you need, but you want to be able to deploy this new capability that sits on top of your existing infrastructure and do it fairly quickly. So just to put this in context, many of you have seen before, you probably have seen these slides. Maybe just quickly show the positioning in the context of existing static related activity. That means something that's very well known to all of us, and where models have been trained because of how people engage historically, is something that we probably will continue to be involved in depending on the client scenario. But what we are interested in are dynamically changing environments that require high speed interactions and recommendations and algorithms that can make and help you to drive that decisioning in some form or another in a real time. Your ability to experiment, if you look at the block in the middle of this chart, and then based on that experimentation, perform any kind of test to help you to make decisions, then drive your essentially top right-hand side, your models that can dynamically train and be converged in interactions. So there will be, at some point, a positioning statement that we'll put out maybe in the next probably 3-4 months. That'll be around multimodal capabilities. So that means the ability to track telephony conversations in real time, or to track people providing visual content in real time, a constant flow of communication actions, and how you deal with nudges and interactions in the moment. There are some core capabilities that is built in the product that we're busy just figuring out how those will be commercialized on the top of whichever cloud provider you're using, because some, especially in the context of Whisper or some of the new voice capabilities, are all becoming online, and it's not a fraction of the cost what it used to be. So it's made life a lot easier for clients wanting to deploy that. The top right is where we're trying to focus, getting out of generic tooling into something that's far more personal and direct. The tooling that supports this is still on the left-hand side. That block shows the existing workbench. There is an entirely new version available for early tests soon, and your ability to generate an entire recommender or do synthetic data will be part of the core capability. And on the right is our graphing analytical tools that we typically use internally to do any kind of, if you want to do complex segmentation or you want to make sense of data and the like in the context of computational social science or behavioral economics, or if you want to apply the social graph, the knowledge graph theory on top of data sets. We know that a lot of that analytic is pretty complicated, but this tool will be available publicly. We're probably going to go out into market probably by May, June. And that means that it has got a analytical interpretation engine. So if you connect one of your data sources, let's say your customer base or your transaction base, and you ask it to generate a graph, and you then ask it to explain it to you, it will be able to do various kinds of behavioral interpretations. So we will extend our behavioral science understanding and what we do further into our broader product deployments. The other part that we will extend, and it has been extended already, and we will continue to provide user-defined tooling for this, is the ability to use a multitude of different algorithms that can converge in real time. We have also created a handful of demo tools that are available now on Docker, and if you go to our Generative Git website, you'll be able to see that there are repos available that you can clone that will show example code as to how you can do all of these things. So there's available for you to extend this. We will continue to work in this space to make sure we extend the base algorithm set. Eric, I don't know if you want to comment on the algorithms development.
No, I don't think anything specific on that for now. I think just to note, like, some of these we'll continue to add to the, like, we'll have the examples, and then also like increase the documentation coverage for all of them as well as we add.
So let's talk about the base layer capability, product deployments, and what's happening in that space. So maybe just a comment out of the starting blocks, so that if you want to run your existing LLMs in a private scenario or public scenario, we support all different kinds of configurations automatically now. It's automatically detected if you are connected to Bedrock or some kind of model garden. You can manage your own estate of generative capabilities if you want to do things like auditing and logging and making sure that there's safety and the context of the prompt generation and the like. So that core capability has been extended enormously in our base product. And we also have, if you look at the Olama configuration and the Olama integration with Claude Code, if you run Claude Code on your desktop and connect to our backend, the agents are available through the MCP. So the Model Context Protocol interface means that you could use any of our code generation and other capabilities built into the product. The idea is that if you wanted to extend the real-time recommender or extend anything that you need to do, all you would have to do is, ask Claude Code to generate you an interface and create me a sample form and do the rest. And it'll do all of that work for you if you wanted to work with operating system at a terminal level. And that same environment is also available through the ecosystem code product that we will launch properly in the next month or so. And that means the full integration into not just Claude Code, but Claude Desktop or in Gemini or in OpenAI, all of those. All that you have to do is point it to the MCP server, the full real-time interface, an SSE interface that you can use with the ecosystem server, and it'll be able to generate and do whatever work you need to do, especially if you wanted to generate an entire system to validate some requirements. This capability will continue to be extended. The other thing is that we now have very well-defined deployment environments for various target cloud companies. Internally, those are available, but clients often have their own templates, rules, and standards. The enterprise version of our generation means that we take those capabilities that you us, that becomes part of the backend rule base, and the generation then sits on top of that. So if you deploy on something like Zero or even an entire estate deployment with the pipelines, the idea is that you can generate the entire base configuration end to end and then run jobs against that to make sure that you can validate your client depending on how you want to deploy any of those environments. On AWS, broad implementation with the clusters as well as the interfaces with Bedrock and any other areas you want to use an LLM. In GCP, this is one of our oldest areas. Our product initially was built entirely on GCP from the beginning. Over time, we realized the clients were more interested in, depending on the region that you're in, maybe with AWS and so on, but this is an enormously important support environment for us, especially the original Kubernetes capabilities. And now with Vertex, you'll be able to deploy basically an entire end-to-end pipeline and visualize it straight from within our product environment. So this is just an example of what a pipeline looks like in Vertex. You can take a job that you used to run in Spark or some historical tech, convert it into a serverless cloud environment, and then run it in Bigtable or another data technology, depending on how you want to do that. And then still a number one priority for most enterprises is to have their own on-premise capability. And OpenShift, like Eric mentioned earlier, is still an enormous important priority for everybody to make sure that it's in their states. Because we've got no Python install and everything that goes with that. If Ramsey is online, you can maybe that if you want to just give you a view of what we've done with our Python stack, different areas, but there's a basic pip install that you can do in your Python world, provide you with all the core capabilities without the complexity of why we had it, how we had it.
I can maybe just speak to that briefly, Jay. So we allow the Python interface into our distinct environments. It allows you to programmatically access or run all the commands within the ecosystem server and the runtimes. It's fully available through pip install, so you can install ecosystem notebooks or download a package that you can then use in any Python environment to directly call any ecosystem service that you have set up locally or in the cloud somewhere. It's very useful.
Great, thanks. Maybe just a comment for everybody. We have been maintaining our Discord public channel for any product-related conversations for people who are interested. Connect to our ecosystem.ai server. There is a public channel for any product conversations. We'll post on there every time we have any new developments. Okay, so the product innovations, maybe just talk to a handful of these. The first thing is that the entire workbench and the way that you interface with our capabilities, the idea is going to be a self-standing, and we probably will end up open sourcing the entire no-code front end so that you clone and extend that for whatever app you want to build. And the concept is that when you do that, you could use our code generation tools to do that for you. So you can use the ecosystem code capability to go generate something new for you. We will be putting into quite a deep test in the next few months. So you're probably going to see later this year enormous extended capabilities in that area. But the idea is that when you use something like this, if you wanted to do anything like synthetic data generation or build a new use case and you draw from existing capabilities, we have got a fairly extensive synthetic data generation tool built in now. If you're in a bank and you want to do whatever capabilities in a telco or in a retailer, you can ask it to generate you a sample data set. We have got a taxonomy built into the back end where you have got an ability to add your own model. So the idea is that if you are in banking and you want to deal with, let's say, retail banking, and you want to deal with customer interactions in the context of, let's say, a certain regulated kind of region, you should be able to just give that, and it will then attempt to match it to a taxonomy. If there is no taxonomy, it's happy to build one. And then from on, you can use it like a guardrail when you let your teams generate, especially in the context of synthetic generation, so that you can use data then to validate and to later on run any of your simulations that is normally needed. The other thing is that we've extended our ability to generate almost all kind of graphs. We support 8 different kind of graph types that can be generated directly from prompts. So the idea is that you just provide it the prompt and it will make sure that it accesses the data environments that you are being connected to. So if it's in our classical NoSQL environment or if it's connected to Trino, there is a ability for you then connected to a deep cluster. The rules around how you would do sampling of the data sets will be available. We don't have that completely implemented yet, but the rules are in place so that if you are an analyst and you want to do some kind of detailed analytic into the back end, you'll be able to do that directly from the workbench, especially if you wanted to validate any results from an existing recommendation. So you've got a nudging engine or a messaging engine that is doing something or providing offers, whatever the like, the context of customer engagements, you should be able to just ask it, how many customers have bought this product over the last month, and the analytic will produce the graphs for you. So we will extend the back end of this also enormously. At the moment, it supports all basic graphs, all basic analytic, and as we get more requests from you, we will continue to add more into the back end. The role of the analyst and the role of the person attempting to make sense of that analytic versus the person that now needs to make it work are often quite separated. So the data engineer and the machine learning engineers compared to the business analyst or the person who just wants to make sense of their data. We've extended the back-end tooling so that you have a full generative capability based on the rules that the system can maintain. You can maintain within this kind of systemic view of how you would do certain enrichments. If you want to do data enrichments, mathematical conversions, you'll be able to give it a basic prompt construct and it generates all of that for you, including data pipelines. At the moment, we have all the basic capabilities and tools in place. The part that will become available is the enterprise templating environment, where you can set the standards and the rules for whatever Python people are allowed to generate depending on what they are working on over time. I showed you this a bit earlier already, but the computational social science capabilities and your tooling needed for you to make sense of any kind of data environment is in test mode at the moment. So for people who want access to it, just request an access from us and we will give you it so you can work with us on testing this. But the basic construct is that you can connect to a number of different data sources. You can connect to Iris State, or you can connect to your own data pipelines and extract the data and then visualize it, including the explanations that come with making sense of what it is that you're looking at. The public API configuration at the moment only supports a handful of APIs. So an example is, like you'll see there's a button there, Spotify. If you want to look at how your data can be augmented with public data sources, connect to those, bring those together, whatever those sources might be. That public data source or even a private data source could be conversations that people have had on phones or data captured through apps. You'll be able to bring that in and make sense of that in the context of your graph visualization environment. This is just to show that you have got this algorithmic analytical capability. If you look on the right bottom of that chart, all the metrics around, let's say, understanding how customers behave, what they do, and when they do it. The tooling is specifically designed to make sense of human ecosystems, the context of product, services, engagement, geography, and the like. Specifically good at that, kind of out of the starting block. And then the products that we are working on at the moment is the ability to take legacy code or prompts into UML definitions and then into code. Ecosystem code is a product that will be, like I said earlier, launched properly, but the point is that there's an entire tooling capability that helps you with that. So if you wanted to do any kind of modeling, you can just go generate it from prompting. At this moment, we only really support the UML 2.5 base standards. There will be an extended version of this over time as we engage more with partners on what those capabilities must look like. The purpose of doing all of this is eventually to either generate a prompt that you can put into your AI tools. If you're a business analyst and you wanted to take a certain user story or a prediction story, you want to put it into this environment to generate the models, you might want to update the models and then generate a demo system so that you can have a look at that demo system and see if it's going to be something that is useful to you. Or you can take the output prompt that is generated from the tool and you can stick it into Cursor or Claude Code or Windsurf or whatever your favorite tool is that does code generation, or OpenAI's new Codex that we've just tested it in and it seems to work pretty well. So the prompt makes sure that it's for completeness and correctness. So that's just a part of the product capabilities and some of the areas that we are going to focus on over time. The next piece is to make you aware of some inventions that we have worked on that we used internally, mostly for demonstrations, and that these will be built out over the next many months. One of those is the ecosystem recommender that you can go and pull it from Docker Hub and you can just connect to your own server. What it can do is basically behave the same way that Google behaves when you go to Google search or any one of those kind of basic product recommenders. It's a out of the box environment for you to validate algorithms and see how you can deploy it. The one part we realized is the new runtime environment where you can vertically scale. You can have a multitude of cases in one stack, and that whole stack is available through an MCP front end. So you can bolt it straight into any of your agentic journeys. So you can use MLflow or any of your public agentic environments, and you'll be able to just connect it in there and be able to then converse with your backend that way. In this case, that backend connector that you see at the bottom there with the runtime essentially is that core capability. The other thing we do is just to build these kind of apps now. If you're interested, we can share the cursor code rules as well as the source code of this that call the recommenders and do reliable recommendations continuously. We've separated the world between what we expect a reliable and an incredibly accurate response or some kind of algorithmic response need to be versus a part of the world where you can generate and you know that if there are mistakes made, it's not going to be the end of the world. The worlds can come together quite seamlessly. So if you wanted to generate interesting front ends, like even an ecosystem code, you can do that today. You can generate entirely new front ends if you wanted to access any of the code base. If you go to ChatGPT, but if you go into developer mode, it's supported in public mode. You just go and connect your MCP. You can connect to our backend, and you can see it shows Ecogentic Chat, or you can connect it to our code environment and ask it to do work in a certain way for you that will then come back into the way that you would perform any of those interactions. Your recommendations and everything can happen straight from within a public environment while you keep your backend secure. This is trying to show that on the left-hand side, you can see an example of the OpenAI's flow tool, or use MLflow. It doesn't matter what you use for that. You register the ecosystem MCP. That MCP is your private company journeys. Those private company journeys are kept entirely secret, and whatever happens in there is not exposed to the public chat. The public chat means a user can ask for their balance of their bank account. You do an OAuth authentication to the back end, and the back end journey can do the work and only pass back the result to that user that has been authenticated in the front end. So we kind of see that this public-private separation of agentic journeys is going to be an ongoing priority going forward. Okay, and then one or two comments just on how the agentic world and the tracking and all of that fits together. You do it in our world, and the metadata sits in our server capability, so that means it's deployable headless. So you can deploy it through Python libraries or some other means, so you can bolt it into your existing AI journey or your existing cloud environment. You can then configure a prediction case that needs to take existing customer data, do things reliably, and then track its performance over time. So for people who've been with us for a while, you know, on the far right-hand side, our ability to track the performance and the data that we collect enormous, and that will continue to be like that. We realize over time that we probably need to extend our data collection even further, even though it's already quite big, because there's so many different bits of evidence that you want to make sure that you keep track of that is time related. So the point is that you can figure that and you can decide how that gets done. But it's all on the back of our capabilities. Then there are an Android app and an Apple app. And the Apple app is in the public store. The Android app, we can send you a link. But what it does, it connects to our backend servers for the Alarma environment, and you can also point it to OpenAI or other servers, depending on if they support chat completions, API endpoints. The source code for this app is also available. If you wanted to see how these generative capabilities are bolted into the tooling, we can share the libraries with you to show how you can do contextual recommenders or interface with your journey. So if you have a conversation about, let's say, your bank, and you want to have an offer that gets injected into the response, means that you've got, on the one end, items that are incredibly accurate and precise values. They also wrap behind MCP so that you've got your security and everything taken care of. And then you have your approximations that are sitting in our recommender or our nudging system, and you can bolt those directly into the journey. It makes it incredibly accurate. The app is there for you to have a look at how that works and how that's applied. So maybe I'll just leave it there for a second and give you a 2-minute view of some of the new things, especially the new ways in which we're going to package some of our modules. I don't want to get into too much detail. And that is that the apps that will become available, like the Spend Personality Extended app with all of its capabilities, including its data ingestion and modeling and the responses, is something that we are working on to deploy for companies and banks who want to run an algorithm, let's say, in an existing cluster, and you run an Azure or an AWS, whatever it is. You want to be able to run the algorithm in its entirety in that environment. And there will be versions available that can do that for you directly within your existing data architecture. The intelligent sales and AI-enabled sales journeys is something that we will also extend enormously, and this will be part of the recommended dashboards that you'll get. So a workbench style environment, if you wanted to do a recommender for, let's say, a retail company, recommender for a bank, recommender for whatever, you'll be able to have a visualization of what is needed and get it all done directly there, and then have the entire rule set behind the scenes generated for you. The idea is to have a big focus on alleviating the pressures people have experienced in using what we have, and to make a lot of it kind of capabilities accessible that are just far easier to utilize the products that we provide. So let's give a quick glimpse on some of our core areas of IP where we focus. So we've got 3 major stacks. It's the UI capabilities and the interfaces into the Python, the no-codes, the APIs, that all of that access the backend environment. So that means it's got a React and Angular frameworks, although it looks like Angular is not going to be that popular anymore, but there are repos on GitHub that you can look at. For the prediction server, Java-based, there is a version also deployed in Python that will be available, and part of it will be open sourced. So you'll be able to access a lot of the prediction capabilities directly from the Python environment. And the Python server and the stack around the ecogentic journeys, how a lot of the algorithms get implemented in a different product line that we maintain internally. So that just means there's an enormous focus on this module-based deployments and verticalization. We came quite a long way last year in the ability to do that, and this year we'll extend that further. And then the last point is that we're still continuing enormous research in our behavioral, especially in things like gaming, hospitality, travel, anything that's got to do with high engagement, transactional, or those kind of environments will continue to be a core part of our behavioral research capabilities. It's just that some of the tools that historically were just part of our is now going to be available publicly for people to use. So yeah, I don't know, maybe Eric, you've got some comments on it?
I think that covers it pretty well. Yeah. I don't know if you wanna...
I think you covered most of it.
Mary, I think that, I mean, that's it from me, unless there are any questions.
I think, we've got 10 minutes, so let's open it up to the floor and see if anyone has any questions or comments. Please feel free to drop them in the chat or raise your hand, go ahead, speak. Otherwise, if Jay has given the full overview of everything you're looking for and you have no questions, then we can call it a day. I'll give it 2 minutes.
Hi, Maddie. Can I ask Jay something?
Have at it.
Jay, I'm curious as to this last point on this slide when you talk about the research into the behavioral algorithms. Is there anything specific you have planned or in mind to implement this year in terms of new algorithmic capabilities for the platform?
Yeah, the separation of the theoretical construct from the tooling, as you know, in our world is an enormous priority. That means using first principle thinking to figure out what you're attempting to achieve with whatever you're designing. An example is one of the most recent ones that we kind of extended and kind of deal with how we want to now find better ways to implement it, like high degrees of interaction in the context of gaming archetype system. We had an original archetypal design. We're extending that now and validating in the context of real world scenarios. It's only once that kind of understanding has been validated and we understand why a certain set of behaviors result in certain outcomes that we then update the theoretical framework before the tooling gets created that is available for clients. So we're very worried that we don't want to deploy algorithms that are unvalidated. So you'll see that even something like this personality is going to be a long cycle of research that we've done to get it to the point, and we're continuously enhancing it. So the big thing is just that this year, the ability to generate additional user interfaces, even if you're not a technical person, to access the backend with the algorithm and see how that can be accessible to you, that complexity is the priority. The research tracks are private at the moment, but we can talk about it offline. We can discuss what those are. There are a number of those that are currently in deep cycle.
Perfect.
Are there any other questions? No. Okay. Then I think we're going to close off here. And I'm going to say, as I did in the beginning, the session will be recorded and it will be available on our YouTube. So please go and check that out. Join us next week. Jason and I will be looking at customer segmentation models and how you can use the technology to redefine those approaches. Please join next week's sessions and have a great week, everyone. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.
Thank you. Bye-bye.